my project, which I do thank NASBA for funding, and I also should thank two other organizations, which I will in a minute, for their participation. We looked at the problem of the fact there are few minorities among CPAs. The U.S. population is about 35% minority, and that's broken down about the three major groups: 5% Asian, 16% Hispanic, and almost 13% African American. Well, if you compare those numbers to what you see on that slide, the AICPA says that we have, among CPAs, 12% are Asian. So you got 5% of the population making up 12% of CPAs. But then Hispanics, 16% of the are Hispanic, but only 8% are CPAs. And among African Americans, which almost 13% of the U.S. population, but it's only 3% of African American CPAs. So there is a distinct difference between Hispanic and African Americans in the CPA population. And the theory is that accounting firms need a diverse population in their firms because, for one thing, 21.3% of all non-farm businesses are minority owned. And many times those business owners want a CPA that looks like them. And there is a lot of them who are accounting graduates, but they are not necessarily CPAs. So the question is, are these people who are majoring in accounting and graduating in accounting, but not passing the CPA exam, are they enjoying the full economic benefits that come with the CPA designation? So our idea was to conduct an empirical investigation of the factors that lead to the dearth of minority CPAs, particularly African Americans and Hispanics. So that's basically the two groups we looked at. And of course, this has been an interest in the accounting profession for many years. The AICPA started looking into this in 1969. At that point, they found that African Americans made up only about 0.3 or 0.4% of the CPA population, much less than 0.5%. And it wasn't much better for Hispanics. They were under 1%. So in that respect, we've really improved since 1969. We have, the percentages are much greater than in 69, but they're still not reflecting the overall population. The groups that we surveyed were two. The National Association of Black Accountants, or NABA, established in New York in 1969, and one of the founders is a co-author on this project. Frank Ross was one of those founders. He is at Howard University. The other is the American Association of Hispanic Certified Public Accountants, which was established in 1972. They now have a different name, the Association of Latino Professionals in Finance and Accounting. Both of these groups are for CPAs and non-CPA accountants. So we had a kind of a good population to survey here to see why are some of these people CPAs and why are some of them not CPAs. So we sent out a questionnaire to the memberships of these two organizations with the full cooperation of the associations and the encouragement of their leaders to respond to the survey. And we looked at things like role models. Are the people certified? What type of schools did they attend? How did they fulfill the 150-hour requirement? And then their perceptions about the CPA certification. We got about 965 responses, but some of those were from the alpha group were not accountants, so we eliminated the non-accountants because, again, that is accounting and finance professionals, so some don't claim to be accountants. Some of the results were varied. The main thing that holds you back is being female. Female African Americans are less likely to be CPAs than males, despite the fact that 62% of the population were female. So you have much more female accountants than male accountants among both populations, actually, but they are not CPAs. Among the membership of NABA, there were about 40% were certified. 40% of the population, but that was just about 30% of women and 50% of men. So you have more women accountants, but you have more men CPAs. The question was, we asked a question about the costs of the exam, the costs of registering, the costs of taking a review course. And basically, CPAs think that's not a problem. Those who are not CPAs think that is a problem. And they basically thought it was more of it seemed to be more of an economic issue. Those who can afford it sign up for the exam, take it, and pass. Take a review course in the process. If they had those who had professors in their schools who held PhDs in accounting were more likely to pass the exam. The fact that just being a CPA wasn't enough for a professor. You must be a PhD as well. The schools these people attended surprised us. There was a significant association between attending a private, historically black college and university than not. You're more apt to be a CPA if you go to an HBCU school. And you're more apt to if it's a private HBCU school. In other words, and then second best is a private non-HBCU school. So again, there seemed to be an economic issue here. If you attend a private university, you're going to do better on the CPA exam if you're an African American. That came as a surprise to us. We thought the great state universities, like the University of Mississippi, would be the best. But no, you're better off going to a private school than to a state university if you're African American. So again, we found that a little surprising. About the pass rate it's about 53% for the HBCU private schools. For public schools, about 38%. You're more apt to be a CPA if you're married, and if you're divorced, you're not a CPA. Apparently, you can't handle both. Although, on the other hand, I thought of that, maybe it's the other way around. If you are a CPA, you're never home, so you never get in any fights with your spouse. So maybe that explains it. I don't know. And the ways of meeting the 150-hour requirement were not significant. We had a lot of people who actually got a master's degree. We had a lot who just took 30 additional hours, and it made no difference in the pass rates. They both did the same. So 150-hour did not seem to be a problem. Those who are CPAs, though, have a much more positive perception about the benefits of the CPA certification. They think that they're going to be wealthy for life if they're a CPA. They have that a much more positive attitude. So we kind of got the impression that attitude was important here. That if somebody had a negative attitude about the CPA exam, well, they either didn't take it or didn't pass it, which maybe makes sense. Hispanics, basically the same thing. Female Hispanics are less likely to be CPAs. Again, in the Hispanic group, about 46% were certified, but that varied from 60% for men to about 37% for women. So again, almost over 20 percentage point difference between men and women. Again, they didn't worry about the cost so much if they had passed. CPA review, though, was an important part of the curriculum. If you had a CPA review course, then you're much more apt to be a CPA. And for Hispanics, there was some relationship between having a CPA and your family, but that was a minor difference. Again, positive perceptions, attitude seems to make a difference. If you want to be a CPA, you will be a CPA. It's kind of what it seems to. And if you say the CPA exam has no value, then you're not a CPA. Those who are CPAs think it has value. The females, though, going along with all the other things we said, are more apt to think that the CPA exam is too difficult, too expensive, and preparation takes too much time. So again, a strong feeling that among females that maybe less apt to want to put, the effort or the money into it. And that is true of the Hispanics as well. And basically, some of our conclusions, looks like the exam costs affordability is a consideration for the non-passers. I mean, it looks like those people are needing more help. If the people who have the money can take the exam and do well, but those who are I guess you could say lower, poorer, are not going to do as well. So you need to have more support there. You also need more firm support. We think that need to have more support within the firms for taking the exam. Now again, most of the large firms say, oh yeah, we really support it. But this all reminds me of what we were talking about back in about 2007. I haven't been active in NASBA since 2007, but at that time we were talking about the fact that not many people were taking the CPA exam at all because they were putting it off. When you can take it any day of the week, any time of the year just about, people were not taking it. Well, the feeling was that it was lack of support from the firms. The firms would say, you can take it, you don't need to take it tomorrow. We need to work on the audit tomorrow. You can take it next week and next month. And, of course, the big CPA firm said, oh, no, that's not true at the top levels. We really support it at the top management. But at the local levels, you had the local managers saying, well, you can do it later. Well, we see sort of the same thing here. Again, role models are somewhat important, but maybe not as important as you would have thought. So summary, what we found, employers need to help more. Economic status seems to be more important than minority status. Attitude of the individual is important. CPA review courses are important. Prestige and money are good motivators. But maybe the most important one that I don't have on there is gender. Females are less likely to be CPAs among the minority groups. And then what we did not find, 150 hour was not a consideration. Nobody was concerned about the 150-hour requirement. But there was an age difference here. If they were 45 or over, then they thought that was a problem. But anybody under 45, I guess, was expected to have 150 hours, so they didn't think anything about it. Of course, it's also a self-selected group. I mean, you could say that, well, those people who didn't like the 150-hour requirement never went into accounting in the first place. But basically, our findings found that there's no problem with the 150-hour law. And basically, I was supposed to come up with the idea of how does this affect the regulators? I'm not sure it does. The regulators don't seem to be at fault here, except maybe for the costs of the exam. But so if you're going to raise, if you need more revenue, get it from your existing CPAs. Don't get it from the new people, I guess. So I'll conclude at that point.